Let's take a look at a couple more advanced controls that we have on our form. Up at the top, there's a section called Form Settings, and each of these has some control over how the form gets used and how the data gets collected. The first checkbox is Require Stanwood Camino School District Login to view this form. If you want to send out a survey to parents or community members that aren't actually using Google for Education accounts with our district, make sure you uncheck that. And if you do that, you get this warning pop up, and this will make the form accessible outside of the school district. And so if that's what you want to do, make sure you do that. Nobody that's outside of the district can fill out the form if this is checked. But if you're using it for students, that's a good idea. The second checkbox is automatically collect respondents' Stanwood Camino School District username. If I'm going to use a form for students, I definitely want to check this. And that'll guarantee that I know which student entered which answers, even if I don't have a question on here about their name. So I'll be able to tell from their email address and login account information who entered what. The third box is Show Progress Bar at the bottom of form pages. It's just an optional touch you can add if you want it. So I'll click that so we can see how that looks on the next run through. Box 4 is only allow one response per person, and obviously that would require them to log in. So if you're giving a quiz, that's a good idea because you don't want to allow them to retake it or enter 2 quiz answers. Now, that's going to prevent me from going back and running through the quiz again because I've already run through it a few times. So I'm going to uncheck that. But just remember, if you're using this for a quiz or something you only want students to do once, make sure you check that. And then also for a quiz setting, you may want to shuffle the question order. I don't, because I had my order kind of lined up intentionally so that they had to tackle these things in a related section. But that's useful if you've got students taking the same quiz right next to each other. Shuffling the questions, will help. Down at the bottom of the form, there are some more checkboxes, and this has to do with the confirmation page when you're finished with your quiz. So right now, the default response is your response has been recorded, and I can change that. So I can tell my students after they take the quiz to head back to Google Classroom, and I can even provide a link right here. And so once they're done with the quiz, if they see that, they can click on the link and it'll take them back to their Google Classroom page. Here's some options to consider. You can show a link to submit another response, so that allows the person to go right back in and take the quiz again. So if you check only allow one response per person, you'll see that that option is disabled and you can't allow them to go in again. So that makes sense. It should work that way. But again, I'm going to uncheck that. The second checkbox at the bottom says publish and show a public link to form results. So you can create a link that allows other people to go in and look at all the responses. Probably not something you're going to do with students, but you may want to do that if you're working in a group that's going to be looking at the data from a survey, for example. The last checkbox says allow responders to edit responses after submitting. And so that's different than filling out another response. It just allows them to submit the form and then maybe go back and look again and see if they want to change any of their answers. So if you're using a form for a quiz or a test, maybe that isn't such a good idea. It depends on how you want to set that up. So now that I've required a Stanwood Camino School District login and I've decided to automatically collect the school district username of the person who does the form, I don't necessarily need to have the name of the student entered. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything, but if I want to remove a question, I can just click the trash can and that question is gone. And like we demonstrated before, you can also move questions around just by dragging them, and everything will kind of pop around and adjust as you do that. Another one of these buttons here, so you got the trash can to delete. You've got this middle button here to duplicate. So if you've got a question that you want to reuse, but just maybe change a few things on, click duplicate and everything will set up the same way You can just change the words around. And then the pencil is for editing, but that's the same as just clicking back here on the question. All right, I'm going to run through this quiz one more time to see some of the changes we just made. I'll view live form. And the first thing that's different is you can see this notification. Your username, and there's my email address, will be recorded when you submit this form. And if you're not this person, it gives you the option to sign out. Then the questions are all the same here. We didn't change any of those. What we did, I removed the question about your name. And down at the bottom, we have a 50% completed indicator. So that tells you how far along on the quiz you are by page. I can click continue. And we get to the end of the quiz here, and there's a 100% indicator. We're on the last page. I can click submit. And I get my custom notification here. Thanks for taking the quiz. Now head back to Google Classroom. And I have a link, and that'll take me right to the Google Classroom page, just like that. So those are some of the changes that we made. Now there's 11 responses. Let's go ahead and take a look at those responses and see how they look in the data view. So one thing to notice here, these are the 10 previous responses right through there, but those were all made before I entered the last few questions. And so none of those are have any data in them. But that's okay. You can continue to modify your form and more things will be added as you go. This is my most recent entry, but I didn't actually answer any of the questions, so they're all blank up until the very last one, which is the recording of my username and my email address there. So anyway, feel free to adjust your quizzes and forms and surveys, and you can keep using the same one and have everybody add to it. Now, a couple things here. In the responses menu, I can choose to turn off responses. So I can make the quiz inactive by clicking the accepting responses. Right now it is accepting, and there's a logo, a little icon of an arrow going down into a box. If I click that, I get this message at the top and it says this form has been turned off. And that's what shows up if someone tries to follow that link. So if I try to view the live form right now, it says the form is no longer accepting responses. So I can go back to the responses menu and click this again, and now it's live and active again. Another thing to look at here is that I can unlink the form, and so I can separate this form from its destination. So I've got this Google Sheets document with all the data. If I unlink it, it'll no longer be connected to that form. I can also change the response destination. So if I want to put this into a brand new Google Sheets document, I can do that. So I'll click Change Response Destination, New Spreadsheet, and I'll say Computer Science Quiz Responses 2, and create it. And now any new entries will go to that new spreadsheet. This spreadsheet won't get any new entries, but these won't go away. Now I still have 11 responses. So that means I could still show the summary of responses, and I could see the 11 different answers that I got there. If I want to clear those out and sort of start fresh, I go to Responses, Delete All Responses. Now this will not clear out anything that's already been sent to a spreadsheet. So it doesn't delete your data that you've already collected. It just resets the responses that are going forward. So the summary of responses will show nothing. So let me delete those. It gives me a warning to make sure I know what I'm doing, and I do, so I'll click OK. And now my responses says 0. And if I try to show a summary of the responses, that data isn't linked to the form anymore, so that's all gone. But if I go back to my spreadsheet, none of my data was deleted. It's all still there. And in fact, the new spreadsheet is ready to receive more information. So if I go to my quiz, and if I run through it one more time, and I'll enter some new data here. Okay, now here's my one response that I just created, the brand new one. And so if I view responses, it'll take me to the new spreadsheet, which has all the previous answers in it, and it has my new answer. Notice that it tries to put the username in the second slot if that's something you added. On the previous spreadsheet that I had, I added that late, and so it ends up stacking it on to the very end here. But since I created a new spreadsheet for the answers to go to, it reorganized the data, and now that shows up at the front end. Not a big difference, but here's all my answers to that latest one. And that's how that works. So now my data is going to a new spreadsheet. This one will remain untouched, and all my previous data is still in there. Okay, once you've collected the data that you want, you may want to share that data with other stakeholders in whatever it is that you're working on. So if you're doing a survey for the community, maybe you've got a panel of people that want to take a look at this. How do you share that data? So we'll go back to the view responses. And remember, this is a separate document. It's a Google Sheets spreadsheet. This could be downloaded as an Excel file. I can go File, Download As, Microsoft Excel, PDF format, and then you can just email it to people or share it on their computer. You can also click the Share button up here. And all the Drive documents work the same way. I can add people's email addresses here, give them edit permission, comment and suggesting permission, or just view permission, which means they can't change anything, they can just take a look at it. I can also get a shareable link, so I can click this, copy that link, make sure you adjust the permissions here. By default it's set to can view, which means they can't make any changes, but you can change that to commenting or editing, and copy the link and you can send it out via email or post it on a website. So those are kind of the two main ways that you can share all the data that you've had working there. Okay, that covers just about all the things that you're going to need to do with Google Forms. Again, it's a great platform for creating surveys or online quizzes or tests, or even for doing a quick check of understanding, a way to poll your students during class. So I hope you find that helpful.